Ever had to choose between family and the love of your life?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's like, where do you even begin?
It's more common than you think.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Guess I just haven't run into it personally, thankfully.
Well, let's just say it's a situation that can really test your loyalties.
And your heart. Right.
Absolutely.
That feeling of being torn in two different directions.
Exactly. And it's not always a clear-cut choice.
No kidding.
So many factors at play. Culture, family expectations, your own personal values.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the nitty-gritty, let's back up for a sec.
Sure.
What exactly do we mean when we talk about this conflict?
Well, it's not just about your family disliking your partner, though that can definitely be part of it.
Right.
It's more about those fundamental differences in worldviews,
Like oil and water.
Kind of, yeah.
So, like, your family might have certain expectations for your life, for your future spouse.
And those expectations might not align with who you've chosen to be with.
That makes total sense.
And then you're stuck in the middle trying to reconcile those two worlds.
Oof. Yeah, I can see how that'd be rough.
It can be incredibly isolating.
Not to mention stressful.
Absolutely.
So I was doing some reading on this, and I came across this idea of arranged marriages.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, in some cultures, family approval isn't just like a nice to have, it's a necessity.
It's woven into the fabric of their society.
Exactly, and that adds a whole other dimension to this whole conflict.
Definitely brings up questions of individual choice versus family obligation.
And where do you draw the line, right?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
There's no easy answer,
But
unfortunately.
I'm guessing there are ways to navigate this, right?
There are, but it requires a lot of, requires a lot of communication.
Okay, communication, got it.
But not just any communication. It has to be open, honest, and respectful.
So, like, no shouting matches at the dinner table.
Hopefully not, no.
Got it.
It's about really listening to each other, trying to understand where everyone's coming from.
Even if you don't agree with them.
Exactly, even if you don't agree.
And I'm guessing it's not just about talking to your family. Right.
You're right, your partner needs to be part of this conversation too.
Yeah, of course.
They need to feel heard, supported.
And, like, they're part of the solution, not the problem.
Exactly.
That's so important.
It is, because at the end of the day, this is about building a life together.
And that life includes your family, whether you like it or not.
To some extent, yes.
But that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your happiness, right?
Not at all.
Okay, good, because I was starting to get a little worried there.
No, there's always hope.
So where do we go from here? What are some practical steps people can take?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge the complexity of the situation.
Okay, acknowledge the complexity.
And then we can start to unpack those layers one by one.
Sounds like a plan.
It's a journey, for sure.
But hopefully one with a happy ending.
Let's work towards that.
Exactly. Let's work towards that happy ending.
We all deserve it.
Okay, so we've talked about the why.
The root of the conflict, right?
Yeah, but what about the emotional side of things?
Oh, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
We're talking about guilt, loyalty conflicts, maybe even fear of judgment or rejection.
That's a lot to handle.
It is. And it's important to acknowledge those feelings, to give yourself permission to feel them.
So don't bottle it up.
Definitely not.
But how do you deal with those emotions in a healthy way?
Well, that's where things like therapy can come in handy.
Ah, therapy, the magic word.
It can provide a safe space to process those emotions, to develop coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be helpful.
And it's not just about individual therapy. Couples therapy can be incredibly beneficial, too.
Because you're both going through this together, right?
Exactly. It's a shared experience.
And sometimes just having someone to talk to who understands what you're going through can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
So therapy, communication, those are some good starting points.
They are, but there's more to it than that.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What else is there?
We need to talk about boundaries.
Boundary.
Yes, boundaries with your family.
Ooh, that sounds tricky.
It can be, but it's essential.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
It's about creating a space for your relationship to flourish, protected from undue influence.
So, like, setting limits on how much your family can interfere.
Exactly.
But how do you do that without causing a major rift?
It's a delicate balance, for sure,
I bet it is.
but it starts with open and honest communication.
There's that word again, communication.
It's key.
And what about your partner? How do you make sure they feel supported throughout all of this?
Well, for starters, make sure they know they're not alone in this.
Like, remind them that you're a team.
Exactly.
That's a good one.
And listen to their concerns, validate their feelings.
Because this is affecting them too.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's easy to get so caught up in the family drama that we forget about our partners.
It have been.
So how can we prevent that from happening?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to make sure you're both on the same page.
Like literally talking about it
Yeah, talking about it, setting aside time for just the two of you.
away from all the chaos.
Away from all the chaos, exactly.
Like that makes sense. Create your own little bubble of sanity.
Exactly.
It's like building your own foundation separate from your family's.
Exactly. It's about creating your own unit.
So we've talked about communication, boundaries, and making sure your partner feels supported.
Those are some of the key ingredients for sure.
What else is there?
Well, we need to talk about compromise.
Compromise, huh?
It's inevitable in any relationship, but especially in this situation.
Because you're trying to balance so many different needs and expectations.
Exactly.
So how do you even begin to approach compromise in a healthy way?
That's what we'll be diving into next time on our next deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get interesting.
So compromise.
Yeah, where were we?
We were talking about how compromise is kind of unavoidable.
Right, right. Especially when you're dealing with family and love.
It's like, how do you make everyone happy?
Without losing yourself in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
It is, but it's not impossible.
Okay, so how do we find that balance? Where do we even start?
Well, I think the first thing is to shift your perspective.
Okay, shift my perspective. How?
Instead of thinking about compromise as giving in,
Yeah, I hate that feeling.
we need to think about it as finding a solution that works for everyone.
A win-win situation.
Exactly.
But how do you actually do that?
Well, it starts with communication,
Of course, communication.
but not just any
Or
communication.
what kind of communication?
It needs to be honest, open, and respectful.
Easier said than done sometimes?
True, but it's worth the effort.
Okay, so we're communicating.
And we're listening.
Right, listening to each other's needs and concerns.
Exactly.
And then what?
Then we start to brainstorm solutions.
Brainstorming. Love it.
Get creative, think outside the box,
And maybe even involve a third party.
like a therapist.
Yeah, or a trusted friend, someone who can offer an objective perspective.
That's a great idea.
Because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. You need that outside perspective.
So we're communicating, brainstorming, getting creative.
And most importantly, we're respecting each other.
Respect. That's key.
It is, because without respect, there could be no compromise.
And without compromise, there can be no healthy relationship,
Exactly.
whether it's with your family or your partner.
It's about finding that middle ground.
That sweet spot where everyone feels heard and valued.
That's the goal.
It's a journey for sure.
It is, but it's a journey worth taking.
Because at the end of the day, love and family are two of the most important things in life.
They are, and finding a way to make them coexist peacefully.
That's the ultimate prize.
Absolutely.
But let's be real, even with the best communication and all the compromise in the world,
Sometimes there's still consequences.
yeah, that's the part I'm dreading.
It's the part no one wants to talk about.
But we have to talk about it.
We do, because it's a reality.
So let's rip off the Band-Aid. What kind of consequences are we talking about?
Well, it could be anything from strained relationships to complete estrangement.
Ooh, that's heavy.
It is, and it's not something to take lightly.
No, definitely not.
But here's the thing. Even if there are consequences,
There's still hope.
there's always hope.
Okay, I needed to hear that.
Because no matter what happens,
You'll get through it.
you're stronger than you think.
I hope so.
You are, and you have people who love and support you,
Even if they don't always agree with your choices.
even if they don't agree with your choices.
That's true love right there.
It is, and it's something to cherish.
So even though this situation is tough
Even though it's messy
and complicated,
and sometimes heartbreaking,
there's still beauty to be found.
there is, and that's what we need to focus on.
The beauty of love, the beauty of family.
And the beauty of finding a way to make them work together.
Even if it's not perfect,
Because perfection is overrated,
it is. What matters is that you're happy.
and that you're true to yourself.
Well said.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
But don't worry, we'll be back soon with more insights and advice.
So stay tuned, folks.
And in the meantime, remember to be kind to yourselves.
And to each other. It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
And there are no easy answers.
Nope, not a one.
But that's okay.
Yeah, you're right.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Cliché, but true.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the most important thing is to...
Take a deep breath.
That's always a good place to start.
Especially when things feel overwhelming.
Absolutely.
So, deep breaths, got it.
And then we start to explore our options.
Our options? Like what?
Well, we've talked about communication, therapy, boundaries.
Right. Those are good tools.
They are, and they
Yeah.
can help us navigate this complex situation.
But ultimately, the decision is up to us.
It is, and that can be scary,
Terrifying, actually.
but it's also empowering
Empowering. How so?
because it means we have the power to choose our own path.
To create the life we want.
Exact.
Even if it means going against our family's wishes.
Even if it means making tough choices.
Choices with consequences.
Yes, but also choices with rewards.
Okay, I love the sound of that.
Because at the end of the day,
It's our life.
it is, and we get to decide how we want to live it.
So what's the takeaway here?
The takeaway is that there's no right or wrong answer.
It's about what feels right for you.
Exactly.
And that might look different for everyone.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening to this
And you're feeling lost
confused,
or scared,
know that you're not alone.
there are people who understand what you're going through.
And there's help available.
So reach out.
Talk to someone.
And most importantly,
Be kind to yourself.
because you deserve it.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive, folks.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.